The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Happy Easter Sunday. It is the 5th of April, 2026. Time's going so fast, Mary.
I know, Polly, it's crazy, but yes, happy Easter to those that celebrate.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, look, let's get on with our news. In the Defender, Children's Health Defense wins settlement in landmark censorship case. Children's Health Defense and the US Department of Justice finalized a settlement against key Biden administration officials accused of colluding with tech companies to censor social media content. Tell us about that, Mary. Very exciting. Well done.
Yes, this is a tremendous win, Polly. So we entered into a settlement with the Department of Justice of the United States. The Trump administration, early in his first year, last year, acknowledged in an executive order that officials in the Biden administration had been censoring speech, including ours at Children's Health Defense, about COVID. Our case, Kennedy versus Biden, had been consolidated with Missouri v. Biden in a Louisiana district court. And so they were consolidated for purposes of discovery. Missouri v. Biden went all the way to the Supreme Court 2 years ago, Polly 2020. Well, it was a little over 2023. We held a demonstration outside the Supreme Court. It was at that point called Murphy versus Missouri. And we talked about the importance of free speech. We're very excited that Missouri v. Biden went back to the district court and they entered into a 10-year consent decree, meaning that the government and the social media platforms, the big platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, may not censor speech at the behest of the federal government. And so if there's a different administration that has different and more coercive policies, this case can automatically, Missouri v. Biden can automatically be reopened. So that's a big deal. It's great news. We got legal fees in our case, which is, of course, very helpful. Free speech is in the First Amendment for a reason, Polly. It's absolutely essential. It is one of the most fundamental human rights. And I'm so proud of Children's Health Defense. I'm so proud of Bobby Kennedy that we stood up for this against the federal government, against the presidential administration, and we settled. They acknowledged that what they did was wrong. And so this is a tremendous win.
Yeah, congratulations. Amazing. All right, well, Michael Neverdark is in the Defender here. Supreme Court signals strong support for medical free speech in ruling against ban on conversion therapy. The US Supreme Court on Tuesday sided with a Colorado licensed counselor who challenged the state law banning conversion therapy for minors, arguing the law violates the First Amendment right for free speech. Legal experts said the ruling may positively affect the outcome of two pending medical free speech lawsuits filed by Children's Health Defense.
So, Polly, this case was called Childs versus Salazar. This is about a therapist, someone who happened to be Christian, who wanted to be able to engage with the client to talk about that client's desire not to be gay or not to be trans. I don't even know the details. But that therapist brought this to the High Court of Colorado. It violated a Colorado law, which said that you cannot help somebody to resist these temptations. And this went to the Supreme Court, and 8-1, Polly, 8-1, the Supreme Court said that is protected professional speech. It's still speech. Even if you consider it therapy or conduct, it's still speech, and that professional has the right to engage in that speech. 8-1, meaning that Justice Kagan's and Sotomayor, liberals on the court, wrote a concurrence. Kagan wrote the concurrence that said, this is a really straightforward First Amendment issue. If you can't say one thing and you can say the flip side of it, that is discriminating on the basis of viewpoint, which is what this was about. How does that affect our cases? We have two cases one of which is right before the Supreme Court right now, Pierre Corey's case versus Bonta, the head of the medical board in California for suppressing COVID-related speech. We have another case on behalf of NBA star John Stockton in Washington against the Washington Medical Board. And both of these cases were about medical free speech during COVID, that doctors had the right to communicate to their patients and to the public about the correctness of using ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, other therapies against COVID, being suppressed by the medical boards and by the state of California, where we already won a preliminary injunction. We believe that probably tomorrow, probably Monday, the Supreme Court is going to issue an order in Corey v. Bonta saying we grant your application for certiorari, meaning the Supreme Court takes it, we're vacating the decision below of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we're sending it back to the trial court. That's great news, Polly. This is really going to change the landscape from the Supreme Court about free medical speech. And we are really excited about this. And again, we are so proud that over the last few years, we have stood up for free speech because it affects children's health. It affects everybody's health. If you can't speak freely as a physician or as some other kind of healthcare practitioner, acupuncturist, homeopath, naturopath, if you can't say what you believe is the truth and what's the correct treatment, then we're all really in really, really difficult terrain. So very excited about this.
Amazing achievement. Trial site news here in the Defender. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. liberated ACIP from Big Pharma. Then a judge snatched control. What's next? For years, critics argued the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice was captured by pharma and federal agencies and professional medical bodies. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. restructured the committee. Then a Massachusetts judge undid the restructuring. Amid the disruption, the search for clarity and for better alignment between science, policy and patient experience continues. And then staying on the same subject, in the Defender, Michael Nevadakis, unqualified judge to blame for highly politicized ruling against Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s vaccine advisors. Retsev Levi, a member of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice, or as we know it as ACIP, said the committee did its best to follow the science and culture of debate on vaccine safety, despite constant hostility and adversity from medical organization. Levi called last month's court ruling that shut down the committee's work unfortunate. He said he doesn't know if HHS will appeal. What's going on there? And that was a great article, by the way, from the Defender there.
Well, that's so the second article there, Polly, the exclusive interview with Retsev Levi, who is head of the working group on COVID-19 within ACIP, is a really important article, right? So this is from somebody right on the inside. And he's been, from our perspective, Polly, really a superstar on ACIP, really trying to get to the bottom, particularly of the COVID shots. When this Judge Murphy up in the federal district court in Massachusetts shut down ACIP, said it was invalid, said that they were unqualified, said everything that Kennedy has done so far needs to be suspended, it shut down, most importantly, Polly, the ACIP meeting that was about to happen about injuries from the COVID shots and about long COVID. That was horrific, right? That is the conversation that we know has to happen more broadly in the United States. Even though very few people are still taking these booster shots, some people are, and these shots are causing severe harm and death. That conversation needed to happen, and this unqualified judge decided that, Kennedy's vaccine policy and ACIP conversations should stop. We, Polly, Children's Health Defense, in our case against the American Academy of Pediatrics, we allege that AAP has been involved in a racketeering scheme with Big Pharma for decades. And because we believe AAP is an illegitimate actor here, they are not acting in the best interest of children, they are not acting on the basis of science, we asked the court to intervene at the trial court stage up in Boston. And Judge Murphy did not let us intervene as a party, but he did ask us to submit a friend of the court brief, which we did through our attorney, Rick Jaffe. they really didn't look at that friend of the court brief in any serious way. We got one footnote in his decision. We have already appealed not only the court's decision not to let us intervene, Polly, but we have appealed the decision overall that he rendered based on two different federal laws. We think that he got it terribly wrong, and we are very hopeful that the First Circuit Court of Appeals will overturn his decision, send it back, and that we can get federal vaccine policy back on track. And if the First Circuit doesn't overturn Judge Murphy, then we believe it will go very quickly to the Supreme Court. This is critical, Polly. This is about vaccine policy for not only all children, this is actually about vaccine policy for the whole country. And we, Polly, are skeptical about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. But even for those people who think that every vaccine that ever came down the pike is the best thing ever, this decision should disturb them too, because if there were an outbreak of Marburg or Ebola today or tomorrow, the federal government would be able to do nothing because ACIP, according to Judge Murphy, was invalidly created. So it's a disastrous decision, regardless of your view of vaccines.
Yeah, well said, Mary. Yeah. Jill Erzin here in The Defender. Attorney calls for sweeping vaccine reforms, citing useless safety studies. This is attorney Aaron Seary. Called for sweeping changes to the US vaccine safety system, saying federal agencies rely on useless and unethical studies that fail to detect risks. He urged officials to release all health data, enforce stronger clinical trial standards, and revisit liability protections. Design a study, post it, publish the results, no matter what they show, that's science, he said. Sounds like we've been fighting this for a long time.
Yeah, we're beating the same drum, Polly. I think what's exciting and why I think it's so valuable that we covered this is Aaron Seary spoke at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. He was introduced by Senator Ron Johnson, a tremendous friend to CHD and to the cause of vaccine safety and choice. And there's nothing that Aaron Seary said that we disagree with or that we haven't been advocating for as long as CHD has existed. But what's important here, Polly, is how we are going mainstream. This is national news. This is the Kennedy Center. This is with people in the Senate and the House of Representatives. And that's what's really so different. You know, Polly, from when you made the movie Vaxxed, when we were shut out of theaters, not only are we now not shut out of theaters, our issues are in the Senate and in the House of Representatives and in the Kennedy Center. So that's the importance here.
Some will die without care. Agency rejects requests to make COVID vaccine injuries eligible for disability benefits. The Social Security Administration swiftly denied requests to fast-track disability benefits for COVID-19 vaccine-related injuries, then declined to disclose how it made the decision. Advocacy group React 19 now alleges a pattern of delays, denials, and lack of transparency. It pushes for recognition and support for vaccine injury Americans.
Polly, this is tragic. This is the Social Security Administration refusing to look at 10 well understood, well-based categories of COVID vaccine injury from compensation. This was a case brought by React 19 and by Surgeon General Latipo of Florida, and they rejected all 10 of these: myocarditis, stroke within a certain period of time, within 48 hours. And the medical director of React 19, Dr. Walskog, said, you know, this is just par for the course. It's just terrible. The denial, Polly, of the injury is shocking.
Suzanne Burdick here. We keep getting pushed aside. Judges' ruling shuts down testimony of people injured by COVID vaccines. The CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee planned to hear accounts of COVID-19 vaccine injuries and make recommendations on how to help the injured. After a federal judge put the meeting on hold indefinitely, the mother of a 34-year-old man who died from the vaccine said, we just keep getting pushed aside. And unfortunately, it's not just COVID-19, it's all the vaccine injuries going right back from as long as we've been fighting this, Mary. Yeah. You will get pushed aside.
Well, and we're not going to stop, Polly, and we're going to win this. And it's interesting. I was in a conversation with Toby Rogers, who's been so important on vaccines and autism, who said, you know, the era of forced medication, it's over. We're in the final stages of winning this fight. But the head of ACIP, that's now been disbanded for now, Dr. Mulhone, called this a heartbreaking suppression of it. And Henrietta Samos, who's you interviewed, Polly, in Vax 3, who said that she was pushed aside, she lost her completely healthy son who was age 34 from a COVID shot, one shot. It's outrageous that this conversation continues to be suppressed, and it will not stand, Polly. It will not stand. It's still happening, but it will not stand.
Suzanne Burdick in the Defender, CDC and FDA admitted to using mostly useless tools to detect COVID vaccine safety signals. Federal health officials knew the statistical tool they relied on to look for COVID-19 vaccination safety signals in theirs was mostly useless. According to internal documents obtained by Senator Ron Johnson and analyzed by scientists at Children's Health Defense, CDC and the FDA researchers used the tool anyway to create analysis as they tried to publish that supported the vaccine safety. I mean, the more you go down this whole rabbit warren, it's ridiculous. I mean, the whole thing's full from beginning to end.
It's falling apart, Polly. It's a house of cards. It's starting to come down. This is a fantastic article. And you did a great interview with Carl Yablonowski earlier this week on this issue. And I love this analogy that Carl gives in this article. He says, it's as if you're sending out a night watchman to look for a piece of paper or a ring that fell on the ground, but the night watchman wears sunglasses to look in the night for the piece of paper or the ring. Of course, he's not going to find it, but it's ridiculous, right? It's a useless tool. If you go out in the dark with sunglasses, of course, you're not going to find it. And that's what they've done. What they did was unconscionable. And I'm so grateful that Senator Ron Johnson is working on this. They knew, and it's clear from these Freedom of Information Act emails, they absolutely understood that this Bayesian analysis, empirical Bayesian analysis, would not show the safety signals, but they did it anyway. They published the work, as Carl Yablonowski says, just retract these papers on your own before we force you to do so. It's outrageous what they did.
Yeah, it was great work from the science department.
Yep.
Jill Erzin, West Virginia governor clashes with education officials over religious exemptions. So West Virginia officials asked the state Supreme Court to overturn a ruling allowing religious exemptions from school vaccine mandates. Attorneys for the state's Board of Education said the rulings put public health at risk. And so Governor Patrick Morrisey said he was disappointed and the board chose to challenge the decision rather than stand up for religious freedoms of our students and families.
Governor Morrisey, when he came into office in West Virginia, put out an executive order creating a religious exemption. West Virginia and Mississippi were the two outlier states until 2014 that didn't have religious exemptions. There's a lot of pharmaceutical industry based in West Virginia. Governor Morrisey, created it as an executive order. Then that's been challenged for the last year and a half in courts. It's now going to the West Virginia Supreme Court. I believe that Aaron Siri's firm, Siri Glinstad, is representing the governor. There are others representing the Department of Education. I looked up who's on that West Virginia Supreme Court. So there's 5 judges on the West Virginia Supreme Court. I think it looks very hopeful that that court is going to side with Governor Morrisey in favor of retaining the religious exemption. And so I'm very hopeful and that we will get a decision in that case from the West Virginia Supreme Court by this summer. We will definitely be following this.
Absolutely. Critics accuse Connecticut lawmakers of interfering in a religious exemption lawsuit. They're advancing 2 bills that could affect the outcome of an ongoing lawsuit, seeking to overturn the state's repeal of religious exemptions from school vaccine mandates. Critics call the bills, proposed at the request of Attorney General William Tong, an attempt to usurp the judicial process.
This is another important fight around religious exemption to vaccination. This is at the state level. The Attorney General of Connecticut, William Tong, pushed forward these 2 bills. And as the local health freedom advocate, Kate Prokop, says, this is an attempt to usurp the judicial process. They're trying to make a carve out from the state Restoration of Religious Freedom Act that says, oh, but by the way, it doesn't apply to religious exemptions to vaccination. As attorney Lindy Urso, who's worked on this case for several years, says, this is a cowardly affront to religious freedom. There was a party line vote in the legislature 21-11 to let the bill go forward. It hasn't yet been adopted by the other house, but this is why we, Children's Health Defense, Polly, support the federal bill, the GRACE Act by Representative Stubbe in the House of Representatives, that would create, under the First Amendment, a universal right to religious exemption from vaccination in the states. People need to be able to make their own informed choices about this invasive medical procedure.
Michael Novodakis, World Health Organization teams with Singapore firm tied to Pfizer and Bill Gates to roll out global vaccine passports. The firm, owned by the Singapore government, participated in a $250 million investment in BioNTech in June 2020, a few months before BioNTech released a COVID-19 vaccine in conjunction with Pfizer. They will help the WHO develop interoperable digital health wallets. Well, not if we've got anything to do with it.
No, but this is just rife with conflicts of interest. The World Health Organization gets its money from the Gates Foundation. The Temasek gets its money from the Gates Foundation. And this is really, Polly, as we know, this is the encroaching control grid. This is what a lot of the whole vaccination paradigm was about during COVID-19. It wasn't even about vaccines, although that was part of it. It was really about getting to these interoperable digital IDs, which is total control, the end of privacy and anonymity and liberty. We're not going to let that happen if we have anything to do with it, but that's where, that effort under the World Health Organization is moving forward.
Headline here, nobody told me a former mental health patient calls out dangerous side effects of psychiatric drugs. Laura Delano told lawmakers the US is experiencing a crisis of over-medicalization, driven by a mental health system that prescribes lifelong drugs without clear information on the risks of these drugs or how to safely stop taking them. She noted that 700,000 teenagers attempted suicide in 2024, even as prescriptions for antidepressants continue to rise. I'm so glad we're covering this because it's such... that's 700,000 teenagers try to kill themselves.
It's unbelievable. So Laura Delano founded something called Inner Compass Initiative, and she's been very active in the MAHA movement. And I'm so happy that she was able to testify in the House of Representatives to the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. I highly recommend to people her book called Unshrunk, and it's her memoir of having been put in the mental health system at the age of, I think, 13, 14, and being in it for many years. She herself attempted suicide. She was on 5 drugs at once. And what was so interesting to me, Polly, that I hadn't understood is it's the same kind of fraud in mental health as in the vaccination world, in the sense that these things have only been tested for 6 to 12 weeks, typically, the clinical trials, but then they put them on, they give them to people for years at a time. Then they will give a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth drug all at the same time, much like 5 vaccines at once. And there's absolutely no science that backs that up. And the article points out that most of these prescriptions at this point for these psychiatric drugs are not actually being given by psychiatrists. They're being given by primary care physicians who literally, Polly, probably know nothing about these drugs. So it's a huge issue. It is a crisis of over-medicalization. Laura Delano says this is even bigger than the opioid crisis because it's so difficult to get off these drugs, Polly. You go into withdrawal. They are intended to be and are addictive. So it's a big issue. And yes, I'm very glad we're covering it too.
Glyphosate poses profound and permanent risks to kids. Children's Health Defense urging Supreme Court to rule against Bayer. Children's Health Defense filed an amicus brief in a US Supreme Court case that could block states from requiring Bayer to add cancer warning labels on products containing glyphosate. Children's Health Defense argued that regulators have failed to protect children who are more vulnerable than adults to toxins from glyphosate exposure, despite growing evidence of serious health and harms.
Well, Polly, I'm really, again, proud of our litigation team, Risa Evans in particular. We drafted an amicus brief that we submitted to the Supreme Court on Wednesday about the effects of glyphosate on children. We found out, working with scientist Stephanie Seneff and others, that the Environmental Protection Agency is not adhering to its own policy, that they need thresholds for toxic exposures for children 10 times what they are for adults because children are developing and they're much more vulnerable to toxic exposures like pesticides designed to kill bugs. And so there's a lot of evidence, Polly, that kids are being harmed by glyphosate and they are developing serious medical conditions. This law really is only about allowing states to put warning labels on these products and to allow lawsuits for failure to warn at the state level to continue. And again, big industry wants to be immune from any kind of accountability, unfortunately. And that's really what's at the heart of this. And I'm very glad that we did put in our friend of the court brief about how this affects kids.
Absolutely. Okay, US Right to Know here. Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson paid $12.6 million in bribes to win drug approvals in government contracts and to boost sales. A new analysis of international enforcement records show the kickbacks, sham studies, and regulatory payoffs prescribing drugs and approvals. What's it going to take for these companies to stop? Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, again, fraud.
This is really mainstream, Polly. This is a journal put out by Cambridge University Press. We are reaching mainstream discourse about this. So obviously this bribery is pervasive. Like you say, it's Pfizer, it's every other big pharmaceutical company. Corruption and bribery are part of the business model. And as the article points out, it's a small penalty for big profits. It's profitable for them to do things that are illegal, maybe every once in a while get caught and pay a fine because the rewards are so great. And we just need a totally new structure if we're going to continue. The structure is a house of cards and it's based on lies. I think that's the bottom line. It's based on fraud and bribes.
Beagle factory farms still supplying dogs for testing and research. Beagles are the most common breeds used for animal testing due to their docile nature. They're used in biomedical research, cosmetic and pharmaceutical testing, as well as toxicity testing to assess the safety and toxicity of new drugs, chemicals, and consumer products. I don't understand why they're such beautiful puppies.
I know.
It's so sad.
It is. This is really interesting. This article comes from Sentient Media, which I didn't know, and it's a nonprofit organization that focuses on the hazards of factory farming in particular and how it affects animals and workers and water and public health. And it's very science driven. And this was an open rescue by an animal rights organization because what they're doing is unnecessary. It's real cruelty to animals. Secretary Kennedy has made it a point to reduce animal testing, but some of this is just so cruel. They talk about the cages for these dogs, Polly. It's cruel.
So now we have the most gross, disgusting, hopefully nobody's eating right now. The headline here, scientists turn pig semen extract into eye drops that kill cancer in mice. I have nothing more to say except that headline for you all. Do you have anything to add to that, Mary? It's just
I do not, Polly.
Disgusting. Okay,
You
I'll
stumped
give
me
you a
today.
enjoy that one. Stay away from the eye drops, people. Now, also, Children's Health Defence are hiring, and this is in the Defender team. So great department to work for, and they're looking for a social media strategist and content creator. So that's for print media. So if you know anybody, please do apply. The application will be in the show notes here as well. And also just to say that tomorrow we're very excited to be able to show another Joe Shenton movie. And Mary, you
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned it, Polly. It's a fantastic film. It's not brand new, but it's about the AIDS epidemic in Africa, or so-called AIDS epidemic. And it's a phenomenal interview that Joan Shenton did with the then president of South Africa, Mbeki. And I did an interview with Neville Hodgkinson, a longtime journalist on AIDS from the UK. And we talked about the film, we talked about Joan's work, we talked about the comparison between AIDS and COVID. He wrote a book on this, Polly, that was published in 2022. So I promised that I would bring him back on to discuss that book because there are really important parallels between AIDS and COVID.
So that'll be tomorrow morning on Good Morning CHD. But until then, Mary and I'll be back next week. So pray big, stand firm, never settle. And Mary will see you tomorrow on Good Morning CHD TV.
Thanks, Polly. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so how can we win this? What can we, the people, do? What are real things that we can do to stop this?
So I mentioned starting with conscious strategic breathing, and I'm not kidding about that. I really think fight the fear with taking back your breath. And I mentioned also, and I'm going to pass it to Paul, the legislation. I think those are two very different but kind of parallel complementary solutions. Paul, go from there.
Yeah, I mean, the awareness is a big key, and how does one become more aware is just focusing on their breath a little bit, right? And that can be as simple as just like slowing down a bit and not being so freaked out all the time by all the bombardment of media and scary stories and things that we hear all the time, you know, like even in our own space, right? Like within CHD or within geoengineering community, we can't allow the just horrific nature of this to debilitate us and to push us into a state of fight or flight, which we saw so much of during the COVID times, right? People were, of course, walked into their homes. They were masked up, not breathing very well anyway. And they were afraid. They were truly afraid because of the mass media and the cycle of news that's coming out every day with the next scariest statistic. And within the geoengineering space, and really all of this kind of battle that we're seeing, we cannot fall into a state of fear. That used to be me years ago when I first discovered the geoengineering problem. I can remember times being so upset and like being angry and like not understanding why other people didn't care about it or that they didn't see it. And like how frustrating that could be, you know, to be like, look up, guys, like this is happening. Why are you not as upset about this as I am? And then almost feeling jealous of my peers for not even having a clue because they're just chill and having a good time. And I think that's probably the answer, Polly. I know that sounds crazy, but like we need to be a little more chill and have a good time and not be so amped up. It's obviously not great. It's not good. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't care about these issues. We should actually try to do something. And, you know, Rob threw it to me with the legislation, which, you know, I've been tracking that now for the last 2 years of the states that have actually gone in and passed bills to ban geoengineering, Tennessee being one of the states. And, you know, Tennessee discovered that they're not really going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to actually enforce this legislation because of the federal government having control over the atmosphere through their legislation. I believe it was the Clean Air Act, which kind of gave them jurisdiction over the atmosphere beyond state lines. So that is going to be an issue. But the simple fact of having a bill introduced in your local legislature is one of the most tangible things that you can do to have a touch on this subject and to have something that, you know, real that you can do to generate conversation about it. So like, you know, just as an example, in the state of Vermont, we have Bill H217, which is going to be, it's an anti-geoengineering bill. Hopefully they'll take it up. We'll see what happens. We know Vermont, they're not really that. They're a little bit more the climate change believers, let's say. But maybe they'll start to go down this path because as we've, you know, opened up a Facebook group, Vermont Skies, and we've had people contact their legislators, I really do believe that those on, let's say, the more liberal democratic end of the spectrum, right now you're seeing a lot of, you know, maybe more conservative voices talk about this subject, which, you know, I think even using this kind of terminology is part of the problem, right? Hopefully what we'll see is people on both sides of the political spectrum, as Dorico has pointed out, they'll start to view this issue as an issue and not something that's partisan. And that, hey, like, you know, we all agree and make America healthy again to an extent. Maybe some are going to fight this, but we need to eat real food. We got to stop eating processed foods. We got to stop eating garbage. We want to eat apples and oranges and organic produce. And then, hey, maybe we shouldn't like spray the atmosphere with a bunch of toxic metals and particulates and then, you know, like ionize it with an electromagnetic weapon. Like maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe that's bad for human health. I think we're going to find that people will all agree on that. They just need to be aware of it and not aware and then afraid.
I think the COVID-topian 5-year moment is instructive, Polly. Once again, fear can be weaponized. Propaganda is powerful. We need to put on our own oxygen masks first, back to breathing, before we're able to help those around us who may be wallowing in that fear and that propaganda. And, we had CHD in the house, literally the people's house in Vermont, in Montpelier 1 week ago. Shout out to Mary Holland and your whole team. And, we're making some strides on the informed consent, bodily autonomy, health choice, medical freedom front. Geoengineering is no different. These same issues that CHD has been fighting for decades around these 4 topics, bodily autonomy, health freedom, health choice, and informed consent, apply directly to geoengineering as well. This is being done without our consent. Most people have no idea the full extent of what's going on. And all of these solutions are designed to bring them to the table. I'm going to use a biblical phrase, gird our loins, right? Because this is a battle. Team Human and nature are in a battle with these very powerful minority of transhumanist globalist types. And we will win, but it will be a dogfight.
My name is Eva Weeks.
And how many children do you have?
I have 7 children.
And
7
how old
beautiful.
are they now?
So I have a 12-and-a-half-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, almost 7, 5-and-a-half, a 3-and-a-half, and a 1-and-a-half-year-old.
And you're going to get more?
I would love it if God gives me more.
All right, so why did you stop vaccinating? Let's hear your story. Let's go back to when you were pregnant with your first child. Did you even have a conversation about vaccinations?
So I used to believe anything and everything the doctors would tell me until I saw a reaction with one of my second child. And in fact, I wrote her story. I shared it in my book here titled Let Me Lend You a Hand. It's one of the chapters how vaccine impacted my child. It's on Amazon if you're all looking for that. My second daughter, she's the one to have had the more severe experience. Now, the older 3, definitely all 3 of them have been impacted by vaccines. We've had, I've seen swelling with the MMR vaccine in the neck of my first child. I saw bump in the arm. I saw all 3 of them had the pox from the chickenpox vaccine at the age of 1.
So they got the chickenpox vaccine and then they got chickenpox?
Yes, they did.
All 3 of them?
All 3 of them. It was a mild reaction. The doctor said it's fine.
Wait, you have the chickenpox vaccines to apparently not make you have chickenpox, and they get it?
They got it.
And the doctor said that's a mild reaction?
Yeah, it's normal. It's okay.
Can't make it up. Carry on.
That happened. And then, but with my second child, and the other thing too, all 3 of my older kids are anaphylaxis. The other ones are not. The older 2 are anaphylaxis with nuts. The third one is anaphylaxis with egg. The other ones that I stopped vaccinating, we don't have any severe anaphylaxis reaction to foods.
So you have 3 children that are vaccinated and the rest have had nothing?
The rest of them, only the 4th one has had only the hepatitis A vaccine that they gave at the hospital at birth.
Hepatitis B?
Or B, whatever. It's just one hepatitis vaccine and the vitamin K, the 4th child. Nothing else. And no other one.
And
the rest haven't had any of them.
Were you in hospital when you gave birth to them?
I was, but I refused because I'd seen reactions. So I just said, I don't want
they
anymore.
They have had nothing. And what's the difference between the vaccinated and the Hep B one, and then the other ones have had nothing?
So the older 3 are the ones that normally when there is viruses that pick up, they're the ones who get hit first by a virus, and they're the ones who kind of experience it more severely. It takes them longer to get well, while the other ones, it's like getting just the sniffles and they're fine. Whatever bug they pick up, it just goes easier. They go through life easier. They don't experience it so severely. They heal faster, easier. Nothing, not as hard as the older 3 have it. So it's like, I see this balance and constantly. So for me, it's like, yeah, that's the vaccinated one is going to go through harder through any viruses that pick up. And then with my second one, though, the main thing of my story really is how she lost part of the memory. It felt like she couldn't remember things that she would do on a daily basis, like Well, backing off a little bit, when she was 7 months old, she had a set of vaccines, and she did something that was really strange. So with her hands, she would do this nonstop. And it was kind of disturbing. It's like, what happened? Why was she doing like that? And my husband, he's also a mental health therapist, and he comes home and he's just noticing her too. And he's like, this just doesn't look right. Why is she doing that nonstop? I said, I have no idea, but the only thing that's been different is just she had the vaccines, but the food, I'm just eating the same stuff, healthy, and lots of vegetables and fruits and meat, and nothing processed. I don't use any processed stuff. So it was just strange to me too, odd to me as a mom, and to him as a father to notice that. And then at age 1, she had another set of vaccines, and we come home and she just starts running in the house back and forth nonstop. 3 days later, a couple of my friends came at different times that day, and both of them noticed as well. And they asked me, why is she running like that? Like, I don't know, but how long has she been running like that? Well, since Friday. Well, what happened on Friday? We just went to the doctor, had the vaccines, and nothing unusual. But then it was bugging me too as a parent, and they go like, wow. So that just kind of, stuck to me. At age 2, the same thing happened. This wave of hyperactivity with her. She was just running back and forth in the house, and like we went to church, and friends would notice it too and would say, why is she so hyper all of a sudden? She's just running like nonstop. She can't help it. And so at age 4, when she was going to have the other set of vaccines, I decided I was just going to separate them one at a time. And so I asked the pediatrician. Thankfully, she was willing to do that, because she didn't normally do that. But she was willing to just go one at a time every month, she said. She did one vaccine. By the time we got home, 20 minutes later, she gets out of the car, and then she just starts running again. She was literally just getting on the bed, jumping on the table, jumping nonstop. I thought, maybe she just has too much energy. I still didn't, was skeptical of vaccines causing any reactions. And this was like 10:30 in the morning until 3 p.m. At 3 p.m., I just kind of had enough. And I said to her, I grabbed her hands and I said, Elise, stop. Could you just please stop? When I held her hands, she was trying really hard to make eye contact with me, and she couldn't. And she does something that was just really strange and just really gave me a very, very scary feeling. I felt like I almost lost my kid. She said to me, but I can't, Mom, I can't. And she could not make eye contact with me, and she was shaking her body and just couldn't hold herself. At that point, I was just terrified. I just let go of her hands, and I go straight to the phone and call the pediatrician's office to let them know. The lady that picked up the phone, she said, I'm sorry, but Dr. So-and-so, I'm not going to say her name now, she doesn't believe to vaccine reactions. She's busy. She doesn't have time for this. And she hung up. And I was just terrified as a parent. I didn't know what to do. I just sat on the couch and was feeling sorry for myself, was feeling sorry for my child. I didn't know who to call, what to do about it. And so around 5:30, my husband comes home. He goes straight upstairs to change, and 10 minutes later he comes downstairs and he tells me, what's with Elise today? She's bouncing off the walls. And so I tell him, what I had seen, what I noticed all day and such, and he is like, oh my gosh, like this is too much. And so he's a mental health therapist, so he sits there and he just observes her for an hour, what she was doing up and down the stairs and coming and jumping. After an hour, he comes to me and he says, no, this isn't normal. This is a normal behavior. This wave of hyperactivity lasted an entire month, and then she was more normal after that. Thankfully we were living right next to a park, so every morning and every afternoon I took my kids outside of the park, and she would just run in big circles around the park and not talk or play anymore with any other children, just run. Neighbors noticed and they would say to me, why is she all of a sudden just running and she's not talking or playing with any other kid? I didn't know what to say. I was like, I don't know. And she was just running. And if I tried to stop her, she would look at me with a fearful look, like you're trying to do something wrong to me. And she would just run away from me, like scared of me when I would try and stop her. So I had to let her just completely wear herself out, like run as long as she wanted, and then I could bring her home. So this was about a month. After that, the hyperactivity died down. And then after that, I thought, well, maybe it was just that vaccine. Maybe it wasn't, maybe I need to try just one more. And so I tried the next vaccine, second vaccine at the 4-year-old, and the hyperactivity was way
Which one did she
bigger.
have?
I cannot remember.
Okay, don't worry.
I'd have to bring it here. But the hyperactivity was way higher, and it lasted 2.5 months, and that's all I had to do. I was just bringing her every morning to the park and every afternoon at the park to just run, because at home it was just totally, couldn't handle it. It was just too much. And then one day my husband comes home from work, and I said, well, dinner is ready. Let's pick up the toys, kids, and let's see let's get ready for dinner, pick up the toys. And she just stood there and was just standing, was not doing anything. And I thought at first, she's being disobedient, right? She's not listening. The other two are picking the toys, picking up, but she's not. She was just standing there and staring at me. And I said, pick up the toys. And I was kind of getting frustrated that she's not doing that. My husband was there, and he said, why don't you bend down? And she bent down. Can you pick up the toys next to you? She did. And now drop them here in this toy box. And she did. Drop them in the box. Now, he said, why don't you do that for all the toys that you see on the floor? And she did. Right after dinner, she came to me when everybody was leaving the room. Mom, she said, the reason why I wasn't picking up the toys is because I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what to do. And that scared me again, because it was just right after those vaccine reactions. And I was like, oh my goodness. But even like other processes, like she was the kind of kid before that she would just get up, and if she was hungry, she'd go straight to the fridge, get food, or open the cabinet. She wouldn't really ask me, tell me, Mom, I'm hungry. She'd just take care of herself. She was really smart at that. She was real good at that. And then one of those days, I noticed how she said to me, Mom, I'm hungry. It was like the first time, and I was like, oh, she's saying I'm hungry? Like, I was surprised, because I'm like, you're not the kind of kid that tells me I'm hungry. You just take care of yourself. And so I said to her, well, why don't you just pick up a fruit from the fruit bowl then? Because it's almost lunchtime, we're gonna eat lunch soon. And she said, what fruit bowl? I said, the fruit bowl that's on the counter. She's like, where? I said, right there, and I pointed it. And she goes there and she tries to reach for the fruit. But every day she would drag the chair, bring it there, get up on the chair, take the fruit, wash it, and eat it. She didn't remember that. And I looked at her strange, like, this is strange. She's not bringing the chair. She's trying to reach, and she said to me, Ma, I cannot reach. And I said, well, drag the chair. She said, what chair? I'm like, this is a chair that she drags every day there. And she's not remembering what chair. So I said, this chair, why don't you just bring this? And so I actually brought it for her there. And I said, you can get the fruit now. So she got up on there and she starts eating. I was like, well, no, you normally wash the fruit. And she said, wash it? Like, strange, like, I do? Like, wash it where? And I said, in the sink that was right next to it. And it was just, all of this was giving me this feeling like, this isn't, what she does every day. She remembers to get a fruit if she's hungry and wash it and eat it. And all that process she did not remember. I had so many times I had to reteach and retrain this child on things that she already knew. And she would ask us questions all of a sudden. There was this year of the 4-year-old year when she got the 4-year-old vaccines. She would ask us questions she already knew the answers to. And me and my husband would just look at each other like, why would she ask that? She already knows that. Like, we have taught her that. Like, this is common sense stuff. She should know. Like, she kept asking over and over questions that were just not, they were part of the routine. She knew.
So was this when you realized, is this the last time?
Yeah, so we have stopped vaccines. We have not vaccinated after that.
And how is she doing now, today?
Now she's doing well. It's like she has been retrained and, rethought and all that. She still, struggles with being anaphylaxis and her other 2 sisters, but we're working on that. Hopefully we will clear it someday.
And what advice do you give to that pregnant young mum that might be watching right now? Just mother to mother.
You have your child's best interest at heart, not the doctor's, not anybody else. So just pay attention to your child, listen to them, and take care of them. the way you're meant to.
And so the question I have for you, that they may be asking right now, is: so your other children, you gave birth in hospital, and you didn't have Hep B and vitamin K. How did you get away with that? Because the bullying is so intense.
I stood strong for it, and I said, no, thank you. We're not going to do that. Not at this time. We'll do it later. I just kept pushing it. Maybe at a doctor's office, maybe. And I got away with it. Yeah. At the doctor's office, we found this pediatrician that is not pushing us for vaccines. They make us sign the waiver that, we're okay without vaccines, but he hasn't been pushing on that. And I've told him my story and such, and it was a little bit of a rough time at the beginning, and but yeah, we got through it. So, is there anything else you want to add to the story? Young moms, read my book about children, about their health, how to take care of babies and such, and how to protect them, because nobody else will. You are the one who is going to do that.
And how can they go and investigate?
On Amazon. It's published on Amazon. Let me
lend
lend you a hand.
Thank you. One last question. So, from you, who is healthier, the vaccinated or the unvaccinated child?
The unvaccinated are healthier, a lot healthier. There's a significant difference. I notice it on a regular basis. I don't have to deal with food allergies with them, and I don't have to deal with, being sick, severely sick when they pick up something. It just goes like it's nothing, just the sniffles. Something else too that I've discovered along the way. I felt like God was really pushing me to go see our immunologist, and this was at the beginning of COVID. After about 3 months, I decided, okay, well, I'm gonna go and see her, and this question just kept popping in my head all the time. What happened to my children? How did they become anaphylaxis, my older 3? And so I go there and I ask her. At first she gave me the answer saying that, well, it's genetics. And I said, well, I would love to do a genetic test, and where can I get that done? And she said, no, you don't need to do that. And then she said, well, it's also if the parents have food allergies, then the children will have food allergies as well. I said, well, me and my husband don't have any, and we've done blood tests before. We have done both IgE and IgG testing, but I would love to do that through you. Can we get that done? And she said, no, you don't have to do that. And finally, she just showed me that I was really wanting an answer for what happened. She just kind of bent down her head and she said to me, well, we've recently found out that immunizations do cause sensitization, so we're working on a new vaccine to desensitize you from vaccinations. But I'm not ready to
send... Say that again slowly. We're working on a vaccine to do what?
To desensitize you from vaccinations, to desensitize children that have been vaccinated from the vaccinations. It's a new vaccine we're working on, and I'm not ready to send you there yet, she said. And they're working also on an arm patch where they're wanting to keep the child who is vaccinated, who has allergies to certain foods, nuts or whatever it is. They will hold this arm patch, and they will have to eat nuts or whatever it is that they're allergic to on a daily, regular basis, because if they don't, then they go into anaphylactic shock, which makes no sense, either one of those. They're both, another market to sell another product, another vaccine or an arm patch. That makes no sense, because who's going to eat what they're allergic to every single day of their life so they don't go into anaphylactic shock, right? And for me, it's like, why then vaccinate the child if you have found out as an immunologist that they do cause sensitization? Why in the first place create that market for it? And then just to sell another vaccine, because it makes no sense. And I asked her even, does this vaccine heal you? She said, no, you're going to have to keep taking it. It makes no sense, right?
Dangerous stuff is what I think.
It's interesting that immunologists do know, but they're not willing to share it. They don't share it with the pediatricians. They don't. And it's just mind-blowing to me that they are hiding it. They have the evidence, they have everything, but they're not willing to share it.
Thank you, and thank you for telling your story.
You're welcome.